Good morning. This morning I'm going to take over to this job. Some of you have been following along. I was building all these parts for this built-in project. It's called the Butlers Pantry. I'm turning this room I've done a ton of work on over this past year into this. And the house is over 100 years old, and I'm using a method in which kind of replicates the way it would have been done on site when the house was built. So I kind of want to fake people out a little bit with this project. So when you look at it, you're like, what? The only thing giving it away is if you see any of the fasteners, because I'm using modern screws here and there to put these cleats in and blocks to support the hinges and all that. So the thing about it is, being such an old home and having settled, and in this room you have to keep in mind too, I jacked the center of the whole structure up like 2.5 inches. I got underneath there with a house jack. It was a nightmare. Those videos are on my channel. So, and it has settled a little more, and even still I never got it perfect because you just can't. It's a whole house. But it used to be, the floor was bouncy before because there was no beams under there, and it was like a soup bowl. The soup bowl is gone, but it's still not as high as you'd like it to be, but that's fine. So my point is, the floor is out of whack, the walls aren't plumb, the corners I'm building from aren't square, but both cabinets are being built from corners into the room where there are end panels for these cabinets, and those end panels have to be placed perfectly so that that cabinet is square, right? The side panel comes out, the whole front of that cabinet system has to be square to that side panel so that when the doors are all hung, everything is flat across the front of that cabinet, And I'm using modern European hinges combined with, old ways of doing things. In the old days, they didn't have that. They do my type of construction, but they would have visible hinges, typical like door hinges, miniature, hinges on there. So, wow. There's people walking around. It's really funny to me. I mean, it's not funny because I might be one of those people one day because they're older. But my gosh, they're walking so slow. It's like, wow, practically going in reverse. Anyhow, now I'm talking on the way here because I just watched something on YouTube that was pretty fascinating to me. I'm into the ancient astronaut theory and all this. There's all these ancient sites all over the planet where these megalithic structures have been constructed, and there's little tells here and there that we can try to come up with an idea of how things were done. And there are these structures, in particular in South America, that are giant megalithic stones. They're kind of pillowy looking, like they're puffy. And the fitment of these stones is so precise, you can't get a piece of paper between the stones. And on a lot of these stones, there's these little protrusions. And, you would think these protrusions probably had something to do with the assembly of these structures. I'm of the belief that the ancients were helped out in some way, possibly by beings that came here that had technology, and I think they had modern type tools, and they certainly must have had modern cutting abilities, because a lot of the stones that a lot of these ancient structures are built with, you can only cut them with diamonds. I mean, there's nothing, we're told that they didn't even have any kind of metal back then when these structures were made. So it's, we still don't understand everything. But this guy had a pretty good theory about these nubs on these stones, and his metaphor, what he's equating it to is like a sculptor recreating a piece. And the way that they do that is that they create a framework that is easily removable and moved from one thing to another, that has precise fixed points. It's like making a jig. So your jig fits here, you can remove it, put it over here, and then use the reference points to get exact measurements each time. So you can fit a piece. You can build a piece that's going to fit this spot exactly, as long as you have these reference points that don't move every time you move your jig. And right now I'm about to do something similar. I have to build, now the first cabinet I made, I got lucky. the corner was square enough for me to put my first vertical, and I built off of that. Now this next one I got to start this morning, the corner is at a square out, not in. If it's in, it's easier. If it's at a square out, what that means is that this first vertical piece I put on, I have to bring it in tighter to the wall for the depth of the cabinet. So whatever the depth of the cabinet is, I have to subtract that and get that first vertical that tight. It's kind of hard to explain, but you'll see it when I start laying things out. To make sure that this outside corner is going to be perfectly square and plumb. So, you know, it's the same sort of thinking. I've got to come up with, how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to take a framing square and I'm going to clamp a piece of wood to it. That's the approximate width of the whole cabinet. And I'll be able to hold it tight to this one wall and put it out here. Now the framing square, right, where that point or that corner is on the framing square, is not going to push all the way into the wall. And that'll give me a reference point to put scribe marks. And now I know I need to subtract that much, or basically I got to put that piece to those marks I put on that wall. So I'm lucky because the wall that the panel is going to be attached to is relatively plumb. It's plumb, a slight little curve in it, barely, and then at the bottom I have to scribe a little bump out. It's all going to be fine. So you'll see that in a moment. I'm going to show you what I did already, point out a couple things, and then I might shoot a few seconds here and there. I can't show you the whole process because the time it takes for me to set up the camera and talk to you and everything else eats into my work, and I got to get this job done. Right? So bear with me on that. You'll just see a few shots here and there, and that's it. So I'm here and I am ready to get to work. I hope you guys enjoy this. All right, so this is what I put in Friday. All right, here's the big end panel. Ugh, man, they got a cat here that sprayed my... That stinks like hell in here. Anyhow, this corner was relatively square. This whole job is possible because I had first did the ceiling, and the ceiling was totally out of whack. There was different layers. It wasn't level or flat. So I did a bunch of shims underneath the joists, or rather framing under the joists that I shimmed to make this ceiling level and flat. And then I put the ceiling on, all that beadboard. So I'm basically building from the top down, all right, because the floors are all out of whack. And on this cabinet, I started with this piece, which had to be scribed. And this wall is out like 3/4 of an inch. So I had to get that piece in vertical at the appropriate distance from this wall to then set this piece. So I put that piece in, then that top rail I butted, marked where this would be. I was able to place this. You can see I had the crown molding up already. It's not primed. And I used that multi-tool to do a perfect slot in the molding, right, which is great because that's a reference point, and I could slide the panel in and it holds itself up. And I got it close to within 3/8 of an inch, and then I made a little 3/8 of an inch block, and I scribed this whole wall, which is perfect, but you can't see because I got a bunch of stuff stacked here because I didn't think before I decided to start this video. And it's a nice super tight fit to the floor. Right, that's what I want. There's no, like on a typical cabinet, you'd make boxes and you'd have a floor in there, but I want this floor to be seen. In this space here, there's going to be a floating desktop and a couple shelves. Long door here, long door here. I have to put a vertical here, and then there's 4 doors across the top. On this side, there's going to be that vertical panel, and 2 doors on the bottom, 2 doors on the top. And this is what I was describing, this is the corner I was describing on the ride over here. So I got to move this stuff out of the way, set up that framing square, and then, you know, lay this out. And I might show you guys a few seconds of that, but again, I got to get it done. So I don't have the time to show you every little step along the way. Keep in mind, there's no plans for this. This is all in my head. just jump into it and figure it out as I go. And I think that's what the ancients did, you know, with the help of somebody. But they just said, hey, this is how this will work. Boom, 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 get it done. That's what you got to do. It's all this overthinking the preliminary steps to find the end result. You got to get to the end result. And the simplest, quickest way to get there is always the best. Keep it simple, stupid. The KISS method. So stay tuned. You'll see a little bit more in a few minutes. That's our mark here. Alright. I got about 1/8 of an inch in. I got to go here. I'm going to make notes on the wall here, but this is the most important part. This is the good one here. There we go. Shit. It's looking like 3/16 of an inch out. I gotta borrow the ladder ear on to check the height at the top here. Alright, I chose a line, and I used a block of wood to mark out that material I got to remove. And then same thing down here. And I'm going to use this thing. I love this thing. Alright, so those notches are made. Now I can fit this piece in here. Of course, I got to scribe it to the wall. And so you got that going on there. And you see there's a gap here, and yeah, so I'll figure all that out. But once this piece here is fit, then I can go ahead and mark the distance on the length over here, and then fit this side panel in. So in the old days, I would take a saw like this, I'd remove the handle and flip it around so I can get it tighter to the wall. And I would score this in as deep as I could, and I'd use drill bits and a chisel and a hammer, and I'd be able to achieve the same thing. It just might not be as neat necessarily. I could usually get it pretty good, but it would take a lot longer, make a lot more noise, a lot of pounding, and this machine here just makes it so much nicer, quicker, just lickety split, man. Alright, so nothing's screwed in. It's just wedged in up here. That's wedged in at the bottom. That's perfectly plumb in both directions. And I got this thing set perfectly plumb in both directions at this corner as well. And I did a great job scribing here. This wall looks like the friggin' ocean. All right. Same thing over here. Now in this one, I don't have it scribed perfect. I've got it scribed at the bottom. I got a little gap here, but that's okay because I can fill that. My original intent was to sink this tighter to the wall, but this is looking real good to me for straight across the front. So I think I'm going to try to live with this and, see what happens. And if I set this right, if I have to move something, the beauty of the system is I could take out what I've put in and adjust it accordingly. But I think we're going to be fine here. I think it's already pretty good. It took 2 hours to do that, to set that, to take this down. I had to cut this 4 or 5 times. I had to use a hand plane up here. You know, fitting these parts take a lot of time. Another thing I wanted to point out is once everything's in, I will obviously be continuing the crown molding across the front edge here and back down into there. Same thing here. That crown molding will wrap here and across the front of that, which is one of the big reasons I needed to make sure that that ceiling was pretty flat and level, because I didn't want these kooky, you know, up and down angles at all those miters. It just looked crappy. Like here, that's a thing. You probably can't read it too much on camera, but that side is lower than here, which made this, which I got perfect. I got this perfect. Keep in mind, this isn't even painted yet. That's just primer. I was able to get that miter perfect, even though there's some kooky angles going on there, way beyond 45 degrees in both directions, right? So going in on that back end is pulled that open, so I had to elongate that edge to get that miter to work. And then on top of that, it was out of whack, you know, lower over there. So, you know, there's, I don't know, man. You do this long enough, you learn how to use the force. You know, you just know it's going to work out fine. And none of this, now this has to be perfectly flat across the front, as close as I get it. These have to be perfectly plumb, right, in both directions, so the doors, everything hang right. But when it comes to doing molding, that doesn't have to be exact. It just has to look exact. There's a difference between looking right and being right. Right. I added all this here before. This was just plaster that was all cracked, so I decided to make the ceiling match that. So I have to tie all that in. I still have to sand and do this jamb. This door has to come off. I have to reconstruct this door to fix all those gaps. All this door trim here, and these doors have to get sanded and painted to match these when I get those painted. So yeah, I've got a lot of work ahead of me, and that's it for this video. All right, I'm not gonna, maybe I'll show it to you in a couple steps along the way. Maybe after I fit the doors and I show you that they're all working right. Probably do a walkthrough, obviously, when it's painted. I've got a solid oak top that's gonna float in here. All right, this is gonna be a, let me stop this for a second. So in this spot here, like I said earlier, there's a long door here, 4 doors across top, a long door here, and then in this space here, it's perfect timing for that beeping outside. In this space here is going to be a floating oak desktop with 2 shelves. And then this wire, we put this in the wrong spot. I'm going to have to drill a hole up here. That wire is going to run across here. I'm going to pad this down a bit to match the depth that this comes down. We'll put a light in here. And then I'll put a panel, a flat panel here to hide all that. So it'll be all nice. And obviously there's going to be a 4-way plug here. So you can sit here and you can charge your devices or whatever. This could be a bar. Keeps going back and forth as to what she wants to use it for. But the fact of the matter is it doesn't matter, because what you use it for can change every day. Hey, today I'm putting groceries here. Today I'm putting the mail here. Today the kid's doing his homework there. Today I'm doing my bills here. Hey, we're having a party. We're going to put all the alcohol here. Change anytime you want. It doesn't matter. So, anyhow. It's going to look good. I did these built-ins and made all these doors here around this fridge years ago. And there's a couple big projects here. Eventually we're going to be taking out all these lower cabinets, redoing all of that. I'm going to try to keep these, but maybe rework them. And new stove, all that good stuff. But for now, I'm just focus on this. And that's it for now. You guys have a good day. Hope you enjoyed it. I know you were curious. There's a bunch of the doors and other parts stacked over here. I know you guys were curious about what was going on and how long it was taking and everything else, but now you see it's going in. I'll catch you on the next one.